Hey there, today I'm going to tell you a story about how we took these beams in our old kitchen and reclaimed them into this band board on our new staircase. Stay tuned to see how we did it. Now while these beams may look structural, they actually were just hiding the electrical cords for running light fixtures to both the island and the old dining table. Our renovation and design plans called for these to have to be taken out, unfortunately, but we did know that this was really nice wood and it matched the rest of the home and it could definitely be utilized elsewhere later down the line, although at the time of taking these down we had no idea what these might be used for. Knowing that we would use them on a future project, we took careful consideration when taking them apart and made sure to keep each of the boards fully intact. And the reason that we did have to take all these down was to make room for our new staircase as well as our new kitchen. There wouldn't be enough headroom if we had left them in. And I have a video on each of those projects in the Project Lake House playlist if you want to check them out. Those boards then sat for about 6 months outside, and then eventually we brought them in to dry them out and start removing the nails as we had finally found a project to use them on. These are all cedar boards, so the elements didn't have too much effect on them. However, they are still very brittle, as cedar is a very soft wood and can be damaged easily. Therefore, we had to go through and find each and every nail and pull it out with extreme care, sometimes using a hammer and often using the vice grips as well. I have to say, vice grips are one of my favorite tools. They really come in handy in a variety of situations, and you find yourself using them more often than you really thought. After all the boards had been denailed, which took honestly a couple hours as there's a lot of boards and a lot of nails, we took them out into the garage to cut them down to size on the miter saw. And this was just a rough cut, but it was a lot easier to manage when the pieces weren't 16 feet long. We also cut these down to actually appease the rest of the family, as a couple 16-foot cedar boards in the middle of the living room isn't exactly eye candy, unfortunately, to everybody. And to add salt to the wound, that's my mom's patio table that we're using as our now workbench for the winter, so yeah. But here my dad's stacking up all that wood so we can make it a little bit neater and a little bit easier on the eyes. And here's where we will be installing all that cedar to cover up that drywall edge as well as the 2x10s. As you can see, there were 3 sections of band board that we're going to need to install, and I started with the one all the way to the left, and I used my jigsaw to notch around the railing posts. I then brought it inside for a dry fit, and it actually fit really well that I didn't even need to hold it in place. I then scribed a line on the back side of the board so that I could rip it down on the table saw. And as you can see, I'm actually doing this freehand, not using the fence, because the line isn't exactly straight, and that's why I scribed it, so I'm just following my pencil mark here. I then brought it back inside to install it, and I'm using 18 gauge brad nails, I think about 2 inches for this, but those are plenty big, probably overkill, as this cedar is extremely light and it doesn't need much to hold it up. And as you can see on the left side there, it's just a butt joint, but on the right side, I had to make it a 45-degree angle to accommodate the rest of the railing. I then ripped down a 1x1 piece that I could fit on the back side, and that's because the drywall edge is actually quite jagged and not flush with that board, and this covers up that seam and makes the drywall look nice and finished. It then became a bit of a rinse and repeat process. However, each of these band boards was unique in its own right, and I took my time with each board as there's obviously a limited quantity of this wood, and I don't want to waste it by making a wrong cut or making a board too short. So with each board, I took careful consideration to make sure all the joints were tight, and I wanted to preserve as much of the wood as I could because there's probably going to be future projects down the line that I also want to use it for. And I did really want to highlight this project not only because I thought it was a cool story of reclaiming all this wood, however it's also a good story in the fact that this little detail, it took a really long time to finish and it's such a small detail and no one will probably ever notice it or point it out to me, but if it wasn't there, it just wouldn't look complete. So I really take pride in these smaller projects because no one really notices, but if it wasn't there, they would. Get it? Would? Okay, sorry, enough of that. Back to the story. We were actually a bit worried about how the wood would look up there as it's a little bit beat up and especially with all those nail holes, but it actually adds a lot of character and patina to the wood and we really like the way that it turned out, and honestly it fits the space even better because if it was new wood I think it would stick out even more. And at this point I thought I was done. I was about to call it a day. However, there was one last piece of kind of jagged drywall underneath this staircase, so I cut some more 1x1 material and just nailed it into place. And then finally I could install the final piece. Always so satisfying. And that's going to wrap up this story and this project. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something along the way. This was a bit of a different video for me, but let me know if you guys enjoyed it by giving it a like and leave a comment down in the description. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as we post a new DIY video every single Saturday. And if you haven't seen any of our other videos, we've taken down a staircase, tiled the whole floor, put up a wood accent wall, and we've got lots more future projects coming. So stay tuned and get subscribed.